It's a great day to be a Wildcat.
You actually have to be on cocaine to be on this podcast? Cocaine. Cocaine, really? Cocaine. Cocaine, really?
What is up, everybody? You are listening to yet another edition of Cocaine Willie, the official Kansas State representative on the College Huddle. I'm your commissioner, Bob Trollsby, and as always, I'm joined by my co-hosts, the good chef, Andre Napier, and Fireball Matt Marchesini. And tonight we're doing another bye-week special. And with basketball season right around the corner, we wanted to do something a little bit different to get you primed for hoops this year. We're joined by my friend and former day job work colleague, Zack, who is a basketball official at the D2 level. And we wanted to use today as an opportunity for you, the fans, to get a peek behind the curtain of the life of a basketball official. Zack, how are you doing and how are you feeling about the 3-4 start for your Colorado Buffaloes this year?
Thanks for the intro, Bob. I'm doing great. I'm excited. That was a big win last week, and we're also on bye, so hopefully we can get a little bit healthier.
How do you feel, though, about Colorado storming the field after a win against Iowa State?
Tacky.
Fair enough. One word. That's all we need. That's all we need. Before we dive into the preview, we want to give a shout out first to our sponsor, Auntie May's Parlor. And I don't have a beer right now, but Auntie May's is located at 616 North 12th Street in the heart of Aggieville in Manhattan, Kansas. Auntie May's has been in business for 51 years and is a must-visit destination in Aggieville on game days and school nights alike. And they have everything you could possibly ever want there. If you want to do therapy, they have therapy, and they do that every so often. The next one is on Tuesday, October 28th. They have music, live music. They have comedy. They have Trivia Smackdown. As we're recording this on Wednesday, October 15th. They have Trivia Smackdown tonight. They have Hosty is performing live at Auntie May's on Thursday, October 16th. And then Distilled is a brass band that's going to be performing for your bye-week entertainment in Manhattan on Saturday, October 18th. So if you're in Aggieville, if you're in Manhattan, make sure you get out to Auntie May's, check them out. And if you are there, be sure to tell them Cocaine Willie sent you, and you can buy one of our Wildcat Country Let's Ride koozies right there at the bar. If you want one, just ask your bartender and they will provide. But that's going to do it for our.
You didn't ask me if I went.
Did you go?
Yes. I brought my high school friends. They loved it.
Great.
They shut the box. You ever played that? Big
Nope.
game. Love Annie Mays. I saw Jeff. He says hi.
Hell yeah. Love it.
Hell yeah.
All right. So Zack, just to kind of introduce you real quick, you're obviously you're a D2 official. You've worked, I would imagine, hundreds of college games across various different levels, high school, youth games. Prior to that, you're also a Colorado Buffalo. So you're familiar with the Big 12. You're familiar with the prowess of the league. So I think you fit right in with this crew in this pod. I want to use today as an opportunity to pull back the curtain on what the life of an official looks like, and also get into some of the in-game stuff when it comes to, okay, if someone's playing a more aggressive game, maybe laying off the whistle a little bit or evening out calls, that kind of stuff. We'll get into all of that. But I want to start from the top and get a better idea of how did you get into basketball officiating? What really drew you to it? And what has your progression looked like through your career?
Yeah, that's a great question to start. I will say that there's probably three paths that people will follow to get into officiating. Number one, you're a decent player, but you're not good enough to continue playing. Number two, you're a really good player and you don't want to get into coaching. And then number three is nepotism. So I fall in the third bucket. I had a family member that refereed in the NBA in the 80s.
That's wow.
Hell yeah.
I'd love to hear some stories about that one. No, I've been fortunate in my time. I've gotten to know know some referees, and it's very much a hard job, starting out from the youth ranks. And then, if you're interested in kind of moving up to different levels of it, it seems like it's a pretty individualistic job, with finding opportunities and, finding, games to be reffing. And probably a lot of our listeners don't necessarily realize that it's not necessarily about knowing the basketball rules, but you're understanding the mechanics, you're understanding the evaluations, and sometimes the politics, of it. So I'm just curious, what does the path look like for someone to try and move up the officiating ladder, going from maybe your local games, local youth games, to moving up to Division II and maybe, Division I at some point?
Yeah. So Matt, I started by doing like AAU games and sub-varsity high school games. So not particularly glamorous, but it was a great job when I was in college. So I would do AAU games on the weekends, and then a couple nights a week I would drive, sometimes 30 minutes, sometimes an hour, to Boulder area high schools and do like the C game, which is the sophomore level, and then typically the JV game. From there, you progress to varsity, which comes with a little bit more glitz and glamour. Colorado high school basketball is not particularly good. Still don't have a shot clock, and hopefully we're able to get that fixed soon. But I was very fortunate in that I was hired at the junior college level pretty early on, so kind of moved more towards that route. From there, there's typically two paths that are presented. The NBA actually does a really good job of scouting and recruiting officials. So they have a grassroots program where they put on 3 or 4 camps every year, between 125 to 150 campers at each one of those camps. They identify, they train, and they develop those guys in the G League. That's much more of like, hey, I want to make this a full-time career. And hopefully your day job is flexible enough to allow you to do that. For the rest of us, it's kind of more towards, you work junior college, you get selected for the tournament, and then you go to a Division II conference tryout camp. Similar hiring process for Division I, which would be kind of the next step. We're in a unique time right now in that there's like 4 or 5 guys that have all of the Division I games, so you have to impress one of those 4 or 5 guys.
Yeah, I feel like we see that in the Big 12. 4
yes.
or 5.
All right. Well, I want to talk a little bit about the grind of said schedule that you were just touching on a little bit. I mean, at the lower ranks, when you're officiating a lot of AAU games, officiating, the high school ranks, but when it comes to that D1, D2, you're doing multiple games a week, going cross country if you're at the higher levels, if it's not local non-con games like that. What does a typical week look like for like a referee at your standing, and then maybe even at the Power 5? Does it differ any? And then just talk about that grind. I know it's a grind.
It is. Bob and I were talking over a beer a couple months back, and I told him this is a thankless job. So if you're looking for congratulations or you did a good job, you're in the wrong profession. So that going in. I'll speak more towards the D1 guys because I think that's probably most relevant. But unlike the NBA guys, we are 100% independent contractors. So that means we can go and work as many different leagues as will hire us. So it would not be uncommon for big time, Power 5 officials to work upwards of 20 games in a month. So to give you a little perspective, let's say you're working a Big 12 game in Orlando on a Monday for Big Monday, and then you're also working in the Big Sky. So you could be in Weber, Utah the next night. So those guys are on the road all the time. And the travel there is a bit insane.
And I feel like we see that a lot because you'll note, on a Sunday morning game that, Higgins or one of these guys is, TV, TV Teddy, TV Tony. I always forget which guy's which, but is working like a Sunday game, but then was doing a Big Sky game the previous night or something. So it is interesting to see that those guys do that kind of back-to-back stuff. And I'm curious when you have that grind, when you have that schedule like that, how much do you think it impacts the on the court ability for these officials to really, do an outstanding job or do their best job?
Bob, I won't give you my opinion. I'll just tell you what the NBA does versus what the college does, and I'll let you guys make your own determination.
Sure.
But I would say it's very rare that NBA guys are working back-to-back nights. If they are special circumstances, newer guys coming up the ranks, travel's probably limited. Whereas the college guys, it would not be uncommon for them to work 5 or 6 games in a week.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially with you all basically being independent contractors, no benefits, paid per game, working as many as possible. To confirm, like you are paid per game. Do different conferences pay different rates as well? I guess I would be curious on that front, because I know there's kind of that consortium with the Big 12, the Big Sky, the West Coast Conference, and a couple others. But I'm curious, do different conferences even at, within that consortium pay different levels, or is it pretty much a flat rate across the board?
That is a great question. We are independent contractors. We are paid per game. We're 1099 across the board. So they're more or less, we are responsible for our own travel expenses, food, anything like that while we're on the road. Some conferences will give like a per diem, but it's not a ton. Pay varies wildly, across D3, D2, and especially at the D1 level. A lot of it is dependent on the official supervisor going out and basically campaigning on our behalfs for higher rates. But suffice to say, the guys that are working the Power 5 games are, mid 4 figures per game.
So kind of talking about maybe moving up divisions and potentially moving up to a Power 5 job. Officials, I mean, typically in the off season are doing clinics, they're working camps to build exposure. And it seems like, as you move up, potentially that advancement depends on networking. So basically, just like in any role of who for Big 12 fans as a whole, obviously a lot of people know who John Higgins is from his history working games in the Big 12 conference, but he does head up the consortium between the Big 12 and the 5 mid-major conferences, such as the Missouri Valley and the Big Sky, West Coast Conference, etc. So when an official wants to move up from Division II to Division I or to the Power 5, what are some keys or things that officials need to consider, when moving up to a level, and how much is it about who you know versus maybe your actual performance or reputation as a referee?
Yeah, Matt, that's a great question. I would say, in my experience, it's probably more than 50% networking, getting to know not only the supervisors, but a lot of the guys on staff, and building a reputation with them. And at the same time, you have to play the game. You have to get to know the various consortium supervisors. And it helps if you've got people in your corner that are helping to champion you. But there's not an exact science to it. Some guys like the way that certain people look or the way that they present on the court. Other guys are much more focused on your communication skills and your ability to diffuse situations. I think, rule knowledge and all of that is kind of the baseline for those guys. So wouldn't be out of the question for us to come into one of those camps and take, a 15, 20 question rule test to start. In addition to that, I think more and more we're seeing film breakdown and study become an important factor in that. So after every game, I'll review it. I will kind of I'll have specific plays in mind, but I'll also clip other plays. I'll send them to internal chats or groups within our division and just kind of get feedback. So I think that part of it is getting good game film out there, believe it or not.
Gotta have good film. I got a huddle tape. I know it's out there somewhere. I want to talk a little bit about game management, and especially from your side of how it works. The way you were just explaining it, where you're traveling, it seems like you're kind of solo, but there's crews out there. So I kind of want to get a quick question before I get into my main topic. Are you always with the same crew every night at the level that you're at now, or are you kind of just going in blind, like, oh, John's going to be there and Scott is going to be on with me tonight?
Not the same crew every night. I think the conference that I'm in, we have a staff of about 80-ish guys. I know 75 of them pretty well, worked games with them. Mm-hmm. So any given night, different crew. Typically for us, we'll have one or two or three of the guys traveling out of the same area. So we'll usually carpool. So we'll get some road time to chat and get up to speed on the upcoming matchup.
Yeah. So and when it comes to that matchup, like, let's say it's two, let's say you're at the D1 level, you're refereeing this Big 12 and it's a rivalry matchup. How do you go into that matchup with the other people that are in your crew that you're going to be refereeing that game with? Do you go in with a game plan, like, we're going to diffuse it immediately right when we get there? The physicality can't go too far, or how's the dynamic? Because if one guy on the crew is just going out there and just blowing the whistle when you don't expect it, how does that work?
Yeah, so for us, I think being aware of rivalry games, games later in the season when it matters for standings or playoffs, it's really important. So for us, hey, this is going to be an emotionally charged environment. Let's come in, let's assert ourselves so that we can nip any of the extracurriculars in the bud early on. But I would say, like, in general, the regular season games that we do, we try to get into a flow, and you have to have awareness of what your partners are calling on the floor. So, hey, we've got a 50-50 block charge on one end and we call it a block. We have a similar play on the other end, and it's not the same calling official. The two other guys need to be aware of what's going on in the game, what was called, and we would like to see similar calls called similarly, is kind of the philosophy there. So it's more of an art than a science. Like, you have to have a feel for the game, and from there you kind of make in-game adjustments. So for instance, we've had games that get a little bit out of hand, get a little bit too physical, especially with post play. So from that point, you have to tighten up, start calling more of the ticky-tack fouls, if you will, to try and get the players to adjust and decrease the level of physicality.
So I just watching basketball a ton, and I think a lot of us will sometimes get into the interactions between referees and coaches, referees and players out on the court, especially in, big games. It's always a talking point from the fans. I would imagine from a higher level perspective, officials build relationships with coaches over time as they are working with those coaches in games. Obviously coaches, there's different personalities out there. You look even across the Big 12 as to how coaches will interact on the sideline. So how do you approach communication when it comes to your role on the court with coaches as well as players? Is it something where, is it dependent on the game where you'll try and diffuse situations a little bit early? Or do you kind of go in a little bit with an open mind on how the game's tone might move forward and let that kind of dictate your interactions on the court?
Yeah, Matt. So I think at the D1 level, those guys have the referees that are working a lot of those games have established relationships with those coaches. So, think of your guys that you see 4 or 5 nights a week. They know those coaches well. They've worked for them before. So they're starting at a little bit of a higher level. They can get away with saying stuff that we can't. But I think at the league level, it's important to know your coaches, get to know kind of their coaching style, their communication style, because if I've got a fiery coach that, will get set off very easily, I think I have to treat him differently than the coach that is just focused on coaching his kids. He'll have a question here or there for me. So I think it's number one, building relationships, but number two, understanding that there are different communication styles for different coaches. I generally find it's a little bit easier to communicate through the players and convey what we need to convey through them. Sometimes the coaches are a little bit more standoffish, and there's obviously ego that comes along with it there. So it's game dependent, situation dependent, but even beyond that, it's coach dependent. So what's Bill Self, for example, like you kind of know if he gets going and he runs hot, then you're going to have to deal with him a certain way versus Tad is a little bit more mild manner. He does like to stomp his feet from time to time, but you would handle those coaches differently.
So I want to, even on that point, when you got coaches and just people in the media that are really critical of your profession as it is, how do you go about, like, do you feel yourself in the moment, like, this is going to be a call that I know I'm going to feel later, I'm going to get a lot of heat for this? Are you thinking about that on the court? Is there any, like, the conversations prior to, like, say you're with a Bill Self, he's really, I'm imagining he's got to put a lot of pressure on the referees because he wants it to go his way. Do you think about, like, the possible criticism or anything like that, that the limelight is shining on you guys?
I think there's an awareness of it. I think I would be lying to say that, we don't feel that or we don't think about that. We try our best to be objective and, kind of take things play by play. So I mentioned, calling similar plays similarly earlier. You try to keep some of that in the back of your mind, but we miss calls. You know that you're going to face criticism when you kick a call. And there are times where you're like, this is a bang bang play. We got to have a whistle on it. And coming out that one of the coaches isn't going to like the call. And that's all right, because in 4 or 5 possessions, he might have a similar play that goes in his favor. And all of a sudden, it's kind of forgotten. So we miss plays. We're not perfect. If you did a breakdown of like what the call percentage was and what goes against the home team versus the visiting team, I would hazard a guess that they're pretty similar. We're gonna make mistakes on both sides, and typically it evens out.
So is the makeup call a real thing? Is that a real thing? Because I've said that my entire life. I can't imagine that is a word that a referee would ever say, right?
That's not in the mechanics manual, Chef. So I think there's an awareness of, hey, maybe I kicked a call, but that I wouldn't say that we go out of our way to find something. If it happens, it's great. then we look like we know what we're doing.
Absolutely. I want to talk about just the mentality, because this is one of the hardest jobs that you could have. And when Chef talks about some of the scrutiny or some of the heat that you might be getting from a home crowd, or if you make a call that, whether you feel like it was a good call or a bad call, or otherwise the fans certainly disagree with you, what would you say is the hardest part mentally about being an official, and how do you reset after a controversial call, or after a game where the fans are really kind of hounding you for how you did?
Yeah. So, Bob, it's funny because I would say probably more than 50% of the D1 guys have a day job. So we are electing to give up time with family and loved ones to go far-flung places, and referee these games and get yelled at and berated. So I don't know why we do it. We're sick, but I get a rush from being around the competitive atmosphere. Kind of gets the juices flowing. So there's something that gets, something that I find very enjoyable, being on the court, running up and down with those kids and seeing them make plays and make shots. I think that there are a couple of different centering techniques, I would say. We try not to get too emotional. We try to be as objective as possible. And obviously the coaches and the players, they're very invested in the outcome. We're invested in getting plays right. So there's kind of a dichotomy there of it, but you'll get heated. Try to center yourself. We talk as referees a lot about self-talk. So we just had a difficult call. It went against the home team. Everybody's yelling at us, booing us. Coach is hot. Players are a little bit upset. From there, it's like, okay, I've got to move on to the next play. I've got to know what my primary responsibility is, and you have to find ways to focus, keeping in mind that coach is still thinking about that play. The players are still thinking about that play. So you kind of just try and move on from there and get yourself refocused.
All right. So I want to bring up probably one of the big things that we see consistently across college basketball and the NBA is replay. We know that replay is kind of expanding in the D2 space. And, it does, as a fan, raise some questions about game rhythm being affected with too many replays. We see that pretty frequently. Players and coaches trusting referees with the replay pieces and kind of taking away some of the human judgment of what you're doing. So how has replay and technology changed this job for you? Has it really helped you? Do you think it hurts the flow of the game and the authority of the officials? Like, what are kind of your thoughts on replay and how technology is being used today?
I think it's something that we're very mindful of. Nobody wants us to have an out of bounds call with 1:50 to go take 4 minutes, So I think the thinking was, when we brought it back, hey, it's kind of like a safety net, so we don't have to be perfect on the court. And then that quickly pivoted to, we still need to be vigilant. We still need to be really confident in our calls. And then we do have that secondary option of replay. But at the Division II level, we're lucky if we get 2 or 3 different camera angles. For the most part, we get one, and it's half court, 15 rows up. Some kid, some student is manning the camera. So we can't guarantee that we're even looking at the right thing. So for us, we don't really, we're a lot more inclined to keep the call on the floor. I think for the Division I guys, and we've tweaked the rules a little bit this year. So I do think we will see more replays, unfortunately. But for us, it's like, hey, these are the things we can replay or we can go to review. These are the situations, and obviously under 4 minutes, the list gets longer, so we have to keep that in the back of our mind. But by and large, we try and keep it short. We try and get in and out. And another major change this year is all three of us will be at the monitor at the same time instead of just two, which never made any sense to me. So the first two guys go and watch, and then one guy gets tasked with standing out there, and then they swap him in, and then there's a discussion. So hopefully with all three of us being at the monitor this year, that will expedite the process. But it's good to have, but it does take away from the flow of the game.
All right. Well, I'm just from how you're talking, I think you're an excellent referee. Just for like, if I had to hear that voice, that sultry voice, I would say that you probably rock at your job. So if you could like give your takeaways on like your profession and maybe some advice to younger people that are, like you said, pretty good basketball players that want to get into the profession and be referees, like, can you give them some advice on where to start? Is there websites or anything like that you might know off the top of your head that that they can find a way to get into the profession? Because I'm sure you could always use more officials out there.
Chef, that's a great point. Our numbers are down. People are kind of fed up with being yelled at and harassed, I think, in every aspect. So why would we voluntarily go to these environments where we're going to get harassed? So we need more officials for sure. I think the best place to start is with your local high school organization. So in Colorado, we were with IABO. So I went through IABO. I was connected with the local high school region here in Colorado. From there, they directed me to a clinic to get me up and running. Basically, hey, let's do rules, and then let's get you on the court doing, third and fourth grader games, which is always fun, seeing who can and can't dribble. They would typically from there get you into like a more formal like rules class. You would be with a veteran official who has dedicated more of their time to kind of get younger officials up and running. That's the best place to start, because through those high school organizations, you're going to meet the people that are in charge of like the AAU stuff. And I think it's important to get exposed to that side of things as well as more of the organized high school, because the more plays you see, the better you're going to be. We are, so in the conference that I work for, we have a directive from the conference commissioner to speak with the kids after we do scrimmages. My message to them is, if you guys want to remain close to the game, officiating is the best way to do it, because there's only so many spots for assistant coaches and head coaches. And we could always use more officials. Those guys typically come in at a little bit higher level because they've played higher level ball. But I will say there's a big difference between playing basketball and refereeing basketball. You have to look at it through some different lenses, but we're always looking for new, young, hungry officials.
All right. So if you're out there and you want to be an official, there's your call to action. So we've got a couple of just fun questions that we wanted to get through here. And feel free to, again, keep this as anonymous as you can, or as anonymous as you want to. But what's the most memorable technical foul that you've ever called?
Oh, man. I was working a high school summer tournament, and I was probably like 23 or 24. And one of the coaches said something that I didn't particularly like, and then he proceeded to stare at me. So I gave him a T, and then he wouldn't let it go. So I said, hey, we're here for the kids. So either you knock it off or you can watch the rest of the game from the parking lot. He didn't take too kindly to that. So he decided he wanted to watch the game from the parking lot. He refused to leave. They had to come and get security. And this was like probably 4 or 5 minutes into the game. So that one sticks with me. I've had a couple where I had a kid when I was doing junior college that punted the ball into the stands. So that was a fun one to do. Fortunately, no fights or altercations like that. But you know, other than that, it's pretty run of the mill.
Also on technicals, I mean, I probably spend way too much time on Instagram, but there's this guy that like does his pretend baseball strikeout on there, and he like goes through all the different techniques of how he would do a strikeout call. What is your technical foul like setup? Is it just like one finger on top of the other one? Are you going full hands tee? Are you like real aggressive with it? What's your technical foul setup? I mean, obviously we can't see you, but I mean,
I love the Scott Foster lowercase t,
Ooh, yeah.
where he's just gently touches his index fingers together, because it's oftentimes it's an emotional call. The kids are fired up, the coaches are fired up, and then if you kind of just give them the soft tee, that's usually the best reaction. So that's my go-to method. Sometimes you got to be a little bit more demonstrative than that, but I like the lowercase t.
I feel like that's almost the equivalent of giving someone a thumbs down or a thumbs up when they cut you off in traffic instead of giving them the finger. Yeah.
All right. Just curious. So what is your weirdest fan, player, or coach interaction?
We'll get real weird. So I started when I was very young, as you guys probably could tell. So I was not too far removed from high school, and on more than one occasion, some of the female high school students tried to get my number or ask me on a date. I had one of the because when you start doing high school, you do boys and girls. I had one of the girls ask me while on the court, ask me on a date. So those days are behind me, thankfully. My first junior college game, during the national anthem, the visiting coach came over to me and asked me how old I was, and I told him, and he said, "Man, I got kids older than you." So stuff like that. Some of the comments from the junior college coaches are a little bit off the wall. There's a reason that they're coaching junior college. So those are typically pretty fun interactions. So the list goes on. Fortunately, I haven't had to kick any spectators out in the last couple of years, but we do pull the game administrator over and you say, "Hey, this is the message we'd like you to convey. We want them to stay, but if they're unable to follow the rules, then they can watch from the parking lot."
I love that. Watch from the parking lot. I'm about to start saying that a lot. Let's get to the nitty gritty because this is a fan podcast. I mean, I played basketball like lower level high school, like freshman year. What's one of these like rules that you hear people talk about, but they have no idea what they're actually talking about? They're sitting in their lazy boy and like, oh, that was this, that, or that. Probably charge, right? I would imagine like what a charge is actually. What's the one rule that you wish fans would like stop and actually think for a second?
I'll give you two, Jeff.
Okay.
So number one, and this one to this day drives me crazy. There's no such thing as over the back. Over the back does not exist in the rule book anywhere, right? So we could have a displacement foul. This would fall under like rebounding fouls. But when people scream over the back, that one drives me nuts. And then the larger one, and this is a conversation that we need to spread the gospel on this, but legal guarding position, right? So if I am, I'm guarding Bob, I've got 2 feet on the floor and my chest is facing him, I'm in legal guarding position. and I can move laterally and backwards to maintain legal guarding position. So this like, oh, his feet weren't set. That whole thing is like, on a primary defender, that's inaccurate information. If I'm the primary defender, I'm guarding Bob, I can move my feet sideways. If he lowers his shoulder, initiates contact with me, that should be called an offensive foul. So everyone needs to learn legal guarding position. Tell your friends, talk about it at the bar, but that's my, I'll get off my soapbox, but that's my main one.
That's like Chef's MO is calling out over the backs.
What? I don't know if I've ever called that. I've never asked for an over the back.
No, you can't sweep it under the rug.
We can go use AI. The over the back has never been said on this podcast by me. Probably none of us because we're ball knowers. But I mean, come on now.
Let me tell you, the guy that sits behind me at the K-State basketball games definitely needs to learn what is legal guarding position and or no over the backs.
I've watched Austin Trice. Trust me, I don't believe in over the backs. That boy, he would jump over you if he could.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be clipping this and sharing it with my wife, who calls over the back. I feel like every time she feels like it happens during a game. So we will definitely be spreading the gospel about that. Last question I have is, what would you say is the best gym or atmosphere that you've had the chance to work in?
Ooh, have to think about that. I've been very fortunate in that I've done some stuff for the Denver Nuggets. So this was a very long time ago. Yusuf Nurkic was still on the team. But we did like a closed door scrimmage for, some local high schools as well as some Special Olympians. And we were on the main court. That was pretty surreal. Those guys are very large and very fast. So that game happens at a much faster rate. Beyond that, I think that there have been a couple of junior college games out in California where, San Francisco City College is kind of a traditional power there, and they've played games. They were playing Santa Rosa Junior College, and it was like standing room only, 5 rows deep, trying to get in and out of the gym. So that was pretty cool. And a bunch of those kids ended up going on to play at the Division I level. So the talent was there. They just didn't always make the best decisions.
I've got one more before Bob probably wraps us up here. And this just came into my mind when you were talking. Referee, we're in a new world where sports betting is kind of like all over the place, fans, all that. Even at the lower level, I'm sure there's really no lines that you could bet on or anything like that. But at the higher levels, do you think there is any like trace of like referees betting on games? Obviously, we've heard like bigger headlines in the NBA, but do you think it's not an epidemic, but just like, is it casual, or is it like a thing that does happen amongst crews in Power 5 or just Division I basketball?
I'm gonna choose my words carefully here. We were required this year, and this was the first time that this was required, but we had to watch a video on sports gambling. And so basically the NCAA and the powers that be do not want referees gambling pretty much on anything, kind of across the board. I would be lying if I told you we weren't aware of specific game lines or kind of who is projected to win. That's kind of the nature of the business. So we are aware of that sort of stuff. Nothing, I will say that for the most part, nothing malicious happens. we make calls as we see them. Like I said, we make mistakes. We're humans. But as far as nefarious activity, I think that with it being so regulated now, it makes it a lot harder to skirt the rules. And, like when Iowa State had all those kids that were like using their kids on their dorm floors information and they ended up finding them. I think with the regulation, it's a lot harder to do what Tim Donaghy did, for example. There's just way more eyes on it and they have the data. So like Jonte Porter, my guy, when you see crazy numbers come in, they're usually, people are tipping somebody off. So I think for the most part, the regulation has helped, and we're aware of it. It goes on like they tell us we have to referee to the final horn. If for whatever reason we have to shoot free throws in a 30-point game, they tell us we have to shoot them. We can't just call the game because there could be money on the line. So we're aware of it, but I don't think it's seeped in too much.
Yeah, and to echo the technology side of it, I guess I can bring a little bit of an element of my day job in here. I work with some large sports books, and they have an insane amount of anomaly detection stuff on the back end where they're tracking down to the IP address, down to geolocation. They have geofencing. It's insane the degree to which they can figure out when fishy stuff is happening. And it's very difficult, I think, to get away with some of that stuff now. So it's a very, very different world now than it was even 5 years ago with all the sports gambling stuff. But Zach, I think that's going to do it for us today. Before we get out of here, is there anything else that you want to say? Any final words that you have for us or for the fans?
Bob, I appreciate the forum here. I think it's important for us to have this dialogue. I think that we've been conditioned as officials to kind of shy away from these opportunities, but I think more and more it's important to connect, to communicate, to let you guys know we're human. This is kind of what's going on. This is our perspective on things. So I do appreciate that. The final thing that I'll leave you with is my favorite refereeing clip of all time is when Ron Gerritsen throws out Rasheed Wallace. This is from like 98, 99, but
Yeah.
This is the infamous whack get out. I know RG personally, he's a great guy. So funny to ask him questions about that, but if you have time and you can pull that clip up, that one is worth watching.
We will we'll link to it in the description of the show.
Perfect.
Zach, yeah, thanks again for coming on. That's going to do it for us today. Once again, a quick shout out to our sponsor, Auntie May's Parlor. Visit www.auntiemays.com for a full list of their upcoming events. And if you're stopping by, be sure to tell them Cocaine Willie sent you. You can buy these Wildcat Country Let's Ride koozies at the bar. So chat with your bartender and see if you can get one of those koozies. Additionally, we are the K-State representative on the College Huddle, which is the largest community of fan-driven content in the nation. Check them out at thecollegehuddle.com and follow them on social media at College Huddle. And last but not least, you can follow our show at Cocaine Willie on all social media, or you can follow us individually. I'm at Bob Trollsby. Chef is at Chef Andre Napier, and Fireball Matt is at Matt Marchesini. Chef.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug, baby.
We are all coke and no joke. Wildcat Country. Let's ride.
Oh, shit. I just turned my camera